and she was doing master composting, and we used to come here, and I remember one year my son was forced to be Willie the Worm, and he never forgave me because he's walking around in a worm costume. So
in the middle of summer.
In the middle of summer.
Yeah.
And so there's no question of your dedication, but thank you for coming and talking to us about solid waste. I told them yesterday there's huge amount going on in this. If we want to make a difference, how we handle our solid waste is huge. So thanks for coming.
My pleasure. Thank you, Neville. Thank you, Lynn, for the invitation. This is the first time I've done a presentation online, so I hope you'll bear with me. I am going to talk today about solid waste management in the Victor Valley, and I think every talk needs to have a title, so mine is There's No Such Thing as the Garbage Fairy. And I'll explain that, and we'll bring it back around to recycling at the end. But the idea of this is that a lot of people seem to think that there is a garbage fairy, especially if your garbage gets picked up first thing in the morning. You put it out at the curb at night when it's dark, and then in the winter you wake up, and if the trash people have been there early, it's disappeared, and it's like the garbage fairy has descended from the heavens, and just there's been a rapture, and your trash has been transported to another world. But I'm sad to say that there is no such thing as the garbage fairy. It really is an issue. It really is a problem, and we're trying to address it in the most responsible way. We're making progress. So what I want to talk about today is, like I said, waste management in the Victor Valley. Specifically, a little bit of information about the trash disposal, how we manage it in the Victor Valley, recycling and composting programs, where we're headed in the future, what direction we're going for the upcoming years, and also talk a bit about career and job opportunities. It's something I've worked in my entire life. I'm really excited about this field, and I am jazzed to try and get more people involved in it because it's been a great career for me, a very rewarding career, both personally, financially. It is a good career, so I want to give the pitch for that. So with that, we're going to move on. Before I get going with this, I just want to give you a little bit of background about me. I'm the Environmental Programs Manager for the City of Victorville. I've worked for the city since 1995, which I can't believe how the time goes by. My background is I have a bachelor's degree in human biology. I had an area of concentration in environmental studies. I've worked my entire career in solid waste management and recycling. I started with the city of Palo Alto. I was very excited. My first job, I was working 20 hours a week at $5.09 an hour. I was making $100 a week, and I was working as the program assistant for the city of Palo Alto. I then moved back east. I worked on the East Coast for 5 years, first for the town of Groton, Connecticut as their recycling coordinator, then for a regional authority as a regional recycling coordinator. I then moved to the city of Poughkeepsie, New York, and I worked for the city of Poughkeepsie for 3 years, had a lot of fun in Poughkeepsie, started a lot of great programs, and then we moved back to California, and I've been working for the city of Victorville since 1995. One thing, I do not have a master's degree, but I think if I were a young person or a person re-entering the workforce, getting my bachelor's degree is really important, and I would go for it. I would find some other additional education because the way of the world these days is it's a big pool and there's a lot of fish, and the way you differentiate yourself is to get some additional schooling. I think if I were to be in the job market today, it would be more difficult just having a bachelor's degree. But so with that, I'm going to get started into my presentation. So waste management in the Victor Valley. I don't know if any of you who have driven along the I-15, you've seen the pyramid on the I guess that would be the west side of the 15 as you're heading north. It looks like the Lexor, but it's our garbage pyramid. There's no flame coming out of the top, but That is where all the garbage from the Victor Valley goes. It's owned by San Bernardino County. It's operated by a private contractor, Athens Disposal. In 2014, which is the last year that I had data for from the state, there was 267,800 tons. That's about 5,150 tons a week, about 858 tons a day on a 6-day-a-week basis, which works out to about 114 trash trucks per day on a 6-day-a-week basis. And that tonnage is down about 25% from the peak of 361,000 tons in 2005. And the reason for that is just the economy. The economy, building has slowed down. People are concerned about their jobs. They just are not buying as much stuff as they were previously. Let's see. I have as I said, it's owned by the county, operated by Athens Disposal. It's been in operation since at least 1955. It began as a burn and cover site. There's nothing scientific about it. There was empty space at the edge of the town. They would go out there and dump the trash. When it got big, they'd throw a match on it and burn it. And it was converted to a solid waste facility, a permitted solid waste facility in 1975, which basically meant that they weren't burning it anymore, but they were compacting the trash and they were covering it with dirt to try and control birds, rats, flies. But again, not a real scientific or high-tech solution to trash. And this is the thing that amazes me, is that there were no gates or scales at the site until the late 1980s or early 1990s. So truly, who knows what's out there? Who knows what's out there? Who knows what was dumped there in the middle of the night? It's about 490 acres in total area, 80 acres of active landfill area. And it was there's a permit that they get from the state to operate, and that permit shows how big and what the contours of the landfill are and how high they can fill it. It was expanded in 98 and 2006, and at the current time it has capacity to 2047. So when I talk a little bit about why we recycle, really landfill capacity in the immediate term is not a huge issue for us in the Victor Valley. It's still important, but it's not a crisis for us. I just wanted to show these pictures. I think it's interesting. I'm going to use my hand. Hopefully this works. But this is the dark thing. Yeah. It has a pointer, but yeah, it's not. Yeah, but I think it's hard to see also. But this dark thing is a plastic liner. This is, they excavate part of it. And these are trucks. It tells you how big it is. And all of that white stuff there, that's the trash that's been dumped for the last couple of hours. The brown stuff is the cover material. It's dirt. Every day they compact the trash and they cover it with dirt. And they just keep filling it. And you can see it does kind of look like pyramids, these terraces. These are different lifts that are filled with garbage. So I think that's interesting. Where does the trash come from? Who are the culprits? Adelanto is about 6%, Apple Valley about 18%, unincorporated county areas about 18%, Hesperia about 20%, and Victorville, sadly, we're number one. We're about 29% of the total tonnage that goes in there. We were about 78,000 tons in the year 2014. And I got these numbers from state of California databases. The new areas of the landfill, they do have a plastic liner underneath, and that is there to try and gather any leachate. Maybe you've heard that term. It's basically a fancy term for garbage juice. So if rain falls on the landfill and percolates down through the trash, it's going to come out. And they now have a liner. They have pipes where they're pumping that leachate out and they're treating it. That is the difference between a dump and a landfill. A landfill is an engineered facility where they're trying to control the environmental consequences of disposing of trash. A dump is an unregulated, non-engineered facility where you're just dumping the trash, and there it goes.
Apple Valley, that's a dump.
Yeah, yeah. The county consolidated their landfill system in the mid to late 90s, and they closed a number of smaller sites. There was one in Hesperia, one in Apple Valley, and there were a number of other ones in unincorporated areas. The other thing about the Victorville landfill, it does have a methane gas collection system, more pipes where they're drawing the methane gas out. When you get decomposing garbage, you create methane gas. They are collecting that and they're flaring that material. You want to do that, you want to control the methane rather than just let it vent. Because it's an explosive issue, hazard, and also we'll talk a little bit more about greenhouse gases later. So that's the regional picture in the Victor Valley. As far as the city of Victorville, which is who I work for, the city disposed, meaning from our residents and businesses, of about 70,000 tons in 2015. That does not include the self-haulers like the landscapers and contractors that might go to the landfill directly, but that's just city Victorville disposal trucks, okay? That's about 1,300 tons a week, 225 tons a day, and anywhere from 730 to 830 truckloads a month of trash go to the landfill. We spent $2.78 million on trash disposal costs, and I say we, I should really say residents and businesses, because we just collect, the city collects the money from residents and businesses, but we just send it right along to San Bernardino County to pay that disposal cost. The current disposal fee for the city vehicles and hauler is $37 a ton. And the city has a waste disposal agreement with San Bernardino County. It's a long-term contract where in exchange for committing our trash to their landfill, we get a lower disposal cost than if we were to just show up at the landfill and pay the posted rate. It's about half the rate at the gate. The current gate rate is about $59 a ton. So just very briefly, why are we doing all this? I just want to point out, and if any of you need to fall asleep at night, I encourage you to go to the California Public Resources Code and look up Division 30 and just start scrolling through all the laws and regulations concerning solid waste. So there's the laws that the legislators pass and the governor signs, and then there are regulations, which are the procedures and the rules for how you implement these various laws. And there's local enforcement agencies, San Bernardino County Department of Public Health, Division of Environmental Health Services, who we all know. They are our local enforcement agency. They're responsible for inspecting the landfill and making sure that it is operating in compliance with its permit. So the question is, who's driving the bus? It's why are we doing what we do? What's the framework that is giving direction to local jurisdictions in the county for management of solid waste? And really, there's federal regulations, sort of minimum regulations about how to manage solid waste, but really it's the state of California that's driving the bus and is pushing the local jurisdictions forward with managing our solid waste more as a resource rather than as something that we just need to get rid of. So I have 3.5 or 4 page of key legislation that I shared with Neville, and he will give to you. So don't worry, you don't have to memorize this unless he tells you. But these are the highlights. So Assembly AB means Assembly Bill 939. It was passed in 1989, and it really reset the clock for how we handle garbage in the state of California. It said, instead of just landfilling and burying everything, we want to have a new hierarchy. Think of a pyramid. At the top, we want to reduce waste. Next, we want to reuse and recycle as much waste as possible, including composting. Then we might want to try to transform and recover energy from whatever waste is remaining, and then only at the end do we want to dispose and bury the residual. So it set a 25 and a 50% recycling goal that it put on local jurisdictions, and it said we needed to meet 25 and 50% diversion by the year 1995 and the year 2000 and beyond. AB 32, Assembly Bill 32 is a huge issue that's driving solid waste management right now. That is greenhouse gas reduction. The state is really out in the forefront in the nation and even in the world with trying to address climate change. And it said that basically we're trying to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions to 1990 levels by the year 2020, a reduction of about 15% below the emissions expected under a business as usual scenario. And the thing about greenhouse gas reduction, it all has to do with organics. And that ties back into solid waste because they want to get organic waste like food, green waste, out of the landfills because they decompose, and when they decompose, they create methane, which is a greenhouse gas. So AB 32 is really driving a lot of solid waste issues right now. AB 341 was passed in 2014, and it established mandatory commercial recycling for businesses and multifamily units of 5 and above. It said any business generating 4 or more cubic yards a week of trash is required to recycle. Jurisdictions are required to establish programs. And then most recently, this is the one that causes me to lose sleep, is AB 1826, mandatory commercial organics recycling, which says that, again, they're going after the green waste and the food waste. This is all about greenhouse gas reduction. So they're saying businesses and commercial establishments that generate various amounts of organic waste are going to have to separate that organic waste for composting as of certain dates. And I won't go into all the details of those dates. But it's happening now. We are currently planning for the organics programs. We've been going out and visiting with businesses, restaurants, the prisons, industry, trying to survey, see how much green waste and food waste they're generating, and start talking to them about this program. And let me tell you, they're really excited about that. The general reaction is, what? We need to do what? Are you kidding us? You know, they thought they were doing okay with cardboard, newspapers, tin cans, aluminum, plastic, and now we're going back and saying, look, the state has passed this law. We need to comply with it, and here's what it's going to mean. Plate scrapings from restaurants, food prep from restaurant areas, food waste is going to have to be kept separate. So there's even more, and Neville will send you that handout with all the other laws that are kicking around in California, but these are the probably the biggest ones that are driving the bus. What next? It's a rhetorical question, just more and more. So recycling really is the future. I mentioned the waste management hierarchy. We used to just dump and bury stuff. Now we're trying to reduce waste generation, recycle, divert materials, reuse materials, compost. Why do we want to do that? Waste is a missed opportunity. Waste is a waste of money, it's a waste of resources, and it's a waste of opportunity. And by recycling, we can do a lot better things with that material. I'm not going to go in, I had several slides. I know we're pressed for time. I had a whole bunch of slides about the benefits of recycling, and I assume that you've been learning about this in your class. I hope you have, but there are, I'll touch on them briefly, but I'm not going to get into a lot of detail. This is the waste management hierarchy. The old approach was dump it, burn it, and bury it. The new approach is integrated waste management, and I would even say integrated resource management, because waste is a problem. These are resources that are out of place. So we want to reduce, recycle, and compost, transform via energy recovery, maybe digestion, anaerobic or aerobic digestion to create gases that you can burn, and then landfill the residual. Why recycle? Just real quick, we can save energy needed to make new products. My favorite stat is recycling one aluminum can. If you fill that can up with gasoline halfway, that's as much energy that you save by recycling that one aluminum can. Aluminum is incredibly energy intensive to create, and when you recycle, you avoid the whole process of mining the bauxite ore needed, all the electricity that's needed to create that aluminum from virgin ore. It's much less energy to just remelt the old cans and make them into new cans. And the energy savings aren't as dramatic for paper and glass, but there still are savings. It saves with air pollution, water pollution, very beneficial on an environmental level. It reduces the demand on our forests. It reduces greenhouse gas emissions. And it conserves our finite material resources. We really, truly do live on an island. There is no other place other than the Earth. We only have a certain number of resources. We need to try and make this a closed loop where we just keep reusing the resources if we want to have a reasonable environment for ourselves and our children and generations to come. There's no other place we can go to find these resources. Economic reasons. Okay, suppose you don't like the environment. You don't. You don't care about the environment. You don't care about trees. You think climate change is a hoax. But you care about people. You care about business. You care about the economy. Well, recycling is great. You save money. You provide industry with raw materials. You support jobs and business. California, it's estimated, has 5,300 businesses, 85,000 jobs in recycling. And in the U.S., it's estimated that the recycling industry is equivalent to the auto manufacturing industry. So it's also very important from an economic standpoint. It's a great opportunity to add value and add jobs. So City of Victorville Recycling, we've done a lot. SRRE is the source reduction and recycling element. It's our plan of how we're achieving 25 and 50% recycling. We have a joint powers authority, the Mojave Desert and Mountain Recycling Authority, where we work cooperatively with Apple Valley, Adelanto, Barstow, Needles, 29 Palms, Big Bear Lake, not Hesperia, unfortunately. We work together on solid waste and recycling issues. We have our curbside recycling program, the Blue Bin program. We have a business recycling program, white bins or blue carts for our businesses. We have several recycling centers, Recycle Alley over on Anacapa and at our Victor Valley MRF. We promote backyard composting for green waste for residents. And we have the Victor Valley MRF over on Abbey Lane, which is our processing center for all the recyclables. It's co-owned by Victorville and Apple Valley, and we're doing about 100 tons a day of mixed recyclables there currently.
Is there a plan, to put green waste trash cans? Because we don't seem to have those here, right?
Yeah, it's a complicated question. We're definitely moving forward with organics for businesses, and we're going to have to see about residential. Residential green waste has been a relatively low percentage of the waste stream, so that's why it hasn't been a high priority for us. But with these new laws and the greenhouse gas reduction, we may be, again, the bus may push us into finally doing green waste and probably food waste, more importantly, for our residential accounts. The future at the state level, California is still driving the bus. There's now a statewide 75% goal. Greenhouse gas reduction is the name of the game, is really pushing things along. From what I've heard, methane gas is 72 times more potent than carbon dioxide. A ton of food waste equals about 0.8 tons of greenhouse gases in the landfill. Product stewardship and product producer responsibility is the idea of trying to hold the manufacturers of various products responsible for the disposal and recycling. So we've seen that already with mattresses. We now have a free mattress recycling program that's paid for by the industry. We're seeing that with TVs and computers. We're going to see more and more of that where we hold the manufacturers responsible for taking proper care of the products that they have created. The future in Victorville, and this circles back around to Tammy's question, is we are moving forward with a new composting facility adjacent to our existing Victor Valley materials recovery facility. It's going to be a composting facility. C&D stands for construction and demolition debris. It's a next phase might be mixed waste processing, where we could create an engineered fuel, perhaps for the cement manufacturers or other manufacturers to burn. We are moving forward currently with a new compost and food waste collection program for businesses. We're currently in discussions with our hauler about what that program is going to look like and what the rates are going to be, how much it's going to cost. And the existing programs, this is my pitch. We have programs, but we need to do a better job with our existing programs. We have curbside recycling, we have business programs, but we still have, 800 tons a day. I think that was the number from Victorville. Was it 8? No, it's not 800 tons a day. It's like 100 and something tons a day, 150 or so tons a day that is still going to the landfill. And I've seen it. A lot of it is recyclable. You know, people rail against the government. Why don't you do something about this problem? Well, we have programs. We need people to use them as much as possible. That means putting every single scrap of material into the blue bin. Lynn, I have a quick question. So how is this, and when I need to stop so they can ask questions? Okay, all right. So I'm going to just go through, we have a few more minutes, and then I'll take your questions. I want to talk about career opportunities, waste management, resource management, recycling industry. You know, there are businesses that use these materials. There's a $250 million paper mill down in Ontario that uses it uses 1,000 tons a day of cardboard. Well, they have people for operations, to buy the paper, to logistics. This industry of waste management, recycling is huge. There's so many opportunities. The whole issue of sustainability is getting bigger and bigger. It's not just about taking care of trash. It's about energy use, water use, you know, greenhouse gas. Hazardous waste management is that's another thing that I do, is I administer our household hazardous waste program. That's another huge field in terms of environmental compliance and proper occupational health and safety. You think there's laws about solid waste management? There are laws about hazardous waste management that it just goes on and on. And for each one of these fields, there are opportunities by sector. There's local government, you know, jurisdictions. There's county, state, or federal doing what I do, planning, implementation, administering a program. There's private industry. Our hauler, Victorville Disposal or Burtec, they have recycling coordinators. They have people that work at the MRF in logistics. They have people that are doing public education and outreach. So the private sector is huge. Schools, hospitals, any large organization nowadays has a sustainability coordinator. They have usually solid waste management. Recycling is often tied in with occupational safety and health. It's training. They all have somebody who's working on these issues. Consultants, recycling businesses and industries, and the kinds of jobs. There's planning, there's analysis, compliance, regulatory issues, operations, hands-on, you know, the making the stuff get processed and shipped and remanufactured, monitoring, sales, communications, education, and more. It's a huge field. There are a lot of really good jobs, and I'm a big fan of it, and I encourage people to go for it because it's a very rewarding field also. You feel like you're making a difference. You know, and this is just real quick. recyclingjobs.com, sustainablejobs.com, greentechnologyjobs.com, the California Resource Recovery Association Jobs Board. I looked at it yesterday. It has over 50 jobs posted, mostly local government, everything from recycling education specialist 1 up to director of operations for Monterey County Solid Waste Authority. Jobs from probably at the low end, $40,000 a year, to the high end, close to $200,000 a year. So, summary, I'm getting there. Our waste is a problem, but it's also an opportunity on many levels. And what do we need to get to the next level? We need some programs. We talked about green waste and organics. We need to get those collection programs going. We need some facilities, which we're working with Burtech, our hauler, to develop that composting and construction and demolition facility. And so we're doing our part, but this is the hard sell. Participation by individuals. We have programs. Now, those who live in Hesperia, it's a little different. Hesperia has a mixed waste processing facility, but if you live in Adelanto, unincorporated county, Victorville, Apple Valley, Spring Valley Lakes, not Spring Valley Lake because they're part of the Hesperia program, Silver Lakes, Barstow. We have programs. What do we need to make those programs work? We need people to do it. We need people to use the bin. Not just recycle aluminum cans for 5 cents, but to use these blue containers for newspapers, for junk mail, for cardboard, for tin cans, for the ketchup bottles, for all of it. It really depends on individual action. And there you go. Individual action adds up. I hear people say this, oh, well, what I do doesn't matter. I'm just one person. And I make the point, if each of us in Victorville just throws away one thing a day, for 365 days a year, it adds up to 42,295 items per year. One person makes a huge difference. You have to remember you're part of 115,000. Already we have 100 tons a day going to our recycling facility. That's all one person at a time doing it. And I calculated to double our recycling rate in Victorville, we need each household, not person, each household to recycle 0.8 pounds more per day, less than a pound per day. So that's a glass bottle, that's a phone book, that's a couple of magazines, tin cans. That's how little it takes to double our recycling. We need people to participate. So just like there's no such thing as the trash fairy to make it disappear magic, there's no such thing as the recycling fairy. Nobody's going to do it for you. We need to participate. We need to use these programs. We need to encourage our family, our friends, and be advocates for this program. This is something, you feel overwhelmed with the problems of the earth. This is something you can do every single day and does make a big impact. So, I got this from Cindy Poor, who I love, and this is just great. A single raindrop does not believe that it is the cause of the flood. The same thing applies. So just remember that we're all raindrops. Together we add up to the flood, and it does come down to individual action. So that's my presentation, and I'm ready for questions. I'm going to put this down.
Granite, do you have any questions for Mrs. Armstrong?
They're stunned.
I know. Nobody from Granite. How about Lewis Center?
Oh.
Anybody from your folks, Matt?
Corey's not here.
Do you have any questions, Matt?
Well, this is all kind of overwhelming for, I think, a high school audience. It kind of puts us in a place that we commonly don't deal with, especially policy-wise. I do like the one thing that you said is it's almost like the word trash and the word waste need to be rebranded probably in our society and be seen as opportunity. It dawned on me as you were speaking that this is probably the biggest growth opportunity of the century. But because we have this bias, because it's trash, it's waste, it's yucky, it's something that we want to get away, we want to get out of our lives, and there really is no such thing as a way on a planet that is built around the recycling of matter. So all that stuff was kind of going in and out of my head, but I'm an environmental scientist. It's just overwhelming. I like the last statement, but sometimes still we think, one individual act is not enough, but that's a really good point to make at the end. There's my thoughts.
And there's a question here in the classroom.
We used to live in Napa Valley, and now we live in Spring Valley Lake, and they say, oh, just put everything all together because they don't have the recycling program. So now you just mentioned that it's like a Hesperia. So what is the best way for us to contribute?
Yeah, Hesperia and Spring Valley Lake is also served by the same hauler. They have a different kind of program where they have a mixed waste processing facility. So they do recover a lot of material. However, I can tell you, if you put newspaper in your trash can and then you scrape spaghetti sauce on it, they are not going to recover that paper. It's not going to happen. So one thing that you could do, we do have recycling centers. If you wanted to just start saving your mixed recyclables, just save them in a big tub or plastic bag would be fine. Don't make a special trip. I don't want you to burn gas. But if you're going into Victorville, anybody can use the City of Victorville Recycling Drop-Off Center. So you can put tin cans, aluminum, plastics, all kinds of clean, dry paper, cardboard. We'll take scrap metal, appliances, TVs, computers, for free. And so I have information about that on our VictorvilleRecycles.com website. Scroll down to recycling centers, and we have a recycling drop-off center on Anacapa that you're welcome to use. I encourage you to use it, especially for the paper products, because they're just not going to get recovered in the way they should in a mixed waste processing facility. How much more time do we have?
Oh, about 5 minutes.
Did you have a question?
Well, go ahead if you.
Well, one thing that, we do get the question, why haven't we been doing green waste? Why haven't we been doing, the green waste? We're very different up here than we are down below. When we were first required to implement programs to get to 25 and 50% recycling, we did, as a region, a waste characterization. We looked at our trash and said, what's in it? Green waste was a relatively small component of it. And so the decision was made back in the late 80s, early 90s, that to get to 25 and 50% diversion, we didn't need to do green waste. So we were avoiding the expense of a third bin and a third truck and a third set of emissions going around. So that's why we don't up here in the desert, and especially with the push to water conservation and xeriscaping, there's even less and less green waste, and people are taking out their lawns. So it's not like down below where there's a lot of shrubby material and grass clippings. However, if I had to look in the crystal ball, I think ultimately we probably will have enhanced programs for organics on the residential sector. In Victorville,
Will the food and the green waste be totally separate then?
no, they could be mixed together, yeah. In Victorville, we do have a program for our residents. They can drop off green waste free of charge at American Organics. We've set up that program for them. And we may, I think we may ultimately end up with some sort of on-demand or on-call green waste program. So if you had 20 bags of leaves in the fall, you could call and schedule a pickup rather than run the truck past the dirt lot where there's nothing most of the year. So that's kind of the reason on the green waste.
We live in the county, so we go to we have a card, so we go to the dump. But it drives me crazy because there's so many beautiful things that are dumped. And when we were in Australia, they actually had a store at the dump that they could sell things. That people, it's like a brand new bed is getting dumped off and then just the bulldozer, and it's just so sad.
Well, two things. At the Victor Valley MRF, we encourage everybody going to the landfill to stop by the MRF first because we have a recycling center there for all the recyclables plus TVs, computers, scrap metal, as well as mattresses, box springs, clothing, and shoes. So you can go in there free of charge and drop off all your recyclables first. and then go to the landfill. But the other thing is part of the expansion with the compost facility, the construction and demolition facility, we are also talking about a reuse area where we could just encourage people and maybe set up something with a local nonprofit to take donations of household items and just have a swap meet kind of exchange program as well, because it's incredible how much totally useful
Well, and
things are
they-
discarded.
And our friends there in Perth, they actually, once a year, they have I don't need this anymore. Everybody puts it out on the curb, and then everybody else shops and takes what they want, and it's awesome because they get,
Right.
everybody can pick up things and get rid of things, but,
Yeah.
it's just,
I do have a list again on that victorvillerecycles.com of where to get rid of your stuff. And it's a donation guide. We have about 40 or 50 different nonprofit groups in the Victor Valley that accept donations of household items, things you don't want but that are still usable.
yeah.
Okay. Lynn, are there other questions or other comments?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Do you know if there's any statistics as far as people that take their recyclables to get cash for? Like how many people actually utilize that, or how much is recycled through that type?
Yes, the state does keep track of that information. I don't have it off the top of my head, as every year I submit an annual report to the state telling them how we've done with recycling, and that's part of the information that I get, is how much of the CRV material is redeemed at the various buyback centers in the city of Victorville, and it's significant. On the CRV program, the redemption levels are, they may be over 80% of the bottles and cans are being redeemed. So it's very good.
I do have one more. Sorry.
Uh-huh.
Well, even at Starbucks, it's like there's the recycle and then there's the and half the time I'm like, well, is a cup that I've used with the lid recyclable or is that trash?
Yeah. I wish Starbucks would put clear signage on their containers. From our standpoint, if it's a cup that's empty and not too dirty, we probably could take it. If it's a cup that's still half full with coffee, definitely not.
Okay. And the plastic lid, would that
The
still
plastic lid could be recycled.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, that's good.
Definitely the newspapers that you
Right.
read there,
Yeah.
yeah. If they give you something in a plastic container, the plastic container could, yeah. So, all right.
Any other questions, AE or Victor Valley College? All right, well, thank you, Mrs. Armstrong.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
your time.
My pleasure.